Welcome back to episode 4 of Mr. Hayden's Ag Lessons. I am Mr. Hayden, and today we are talking about food chains. Now, I know a lot of you were depressed today because we had a lot of rain here in Independence. So you will notice an abnormal number of times my sump pump is going to have to go off. But that's great news for our sponsors. And speaking of sponsors, they actually don't pay any money. And that's why this show has no budget. But we will continue to recognize some fictitious and some real businesses here in town. They did promise me some Monopoly money from my family because my kids ate all the lower dollar bills. So we are excited today to talk about food chains, and I know what pops into your mind right away when you think about a food chain: onion rings. Onion rings, lots of onion rings all together. So I want you to comment in this video below, what would make a better chain, some type of food? What chain would be the best? So think about it, okay? But today we're talking about food chains. A food chain is an order of all the energy that goes through our different ecosystems in our planet. There's our first sump pump, 30 seconds in. Today, thank you, Dr. Kegler, and Aaron Dentistry. Have your smile ready for when you need it again. So when I was talking about our food chains here, we have a bunch of different parts. And if you'll notice, Amazon came through in the clutch. They did get me the whiteboard one day early. Thank you, Amazon. All right. So food chain, we have our very bottom. First off, I want to talk about producers. And I know a lot of you are thinking, hey, I thought producers were only grass and trees. Well, I'm here to burst your bubble. Did you know that roughly 60 to 70% of the oxygen that is produced for us humans is actually created by phytoplankton? And they mainly live in the ocean and our freshwater system. These tiny microscopic single-celled organisms, they absorb sunlight and absorb CO2 to create oxygen for us to breathe. They are essential for all other life in the ocean. The phytoplankton get eaten up by zooplankton, and zooplankton get eaten up by whales and other small fish. They are the primary energy source for many different levels of the ecosystem. So some of the smallest creatures are some of the most important when we talk about food chains. As we go from there, when we move back onto land, you think about, we think about plants, we think about trees. They provide a lot of different plant material for insects to eat, for small rodents to eat, a lot of different birds. We have a lot of different, we'll talk about some rabbits, things of that nature. So the example that we're going to work with here is a deciduous forest. And I know you're thinking deciduous forest, that's a really big word. Can't you be more decisive, Mr. Hayden? Well, deciduous forest is just any forest that has trees that lose their leaves every fall. But back to the food chain here. We have our producers, such as grass. There is our sump pump number 2. We had over an inch of rain today, and we're going to have a lot of commercials. Zach Osborne, Financial Services for Farm Bureau. Protect what you've earned and grow the rest. Back to our food chain. We have our primary consumers, our rabbits, okay? Things that eat plant material. These are very important because they provide the main source of energy for our next order, which is our secondary consumers, the fox. And if you notice these numbers to the left right here, this is the conversion from level to level. So if I start out with 10,000 calories of plant-based material, and then it goes and is eaten by consumers, the primary consumers, only 1,000 of that 10,000, 10% is transferred to the next level. That other energy is lost in the activities of the rabbit, whether they move around and they're not eating food, not all the food is consumed. So when you think about it, they move up 10% every time. And we go to our rabbit here. One thing we know about rabbits is they are very prolific. They do like to breed. You can have a lot of rabbits very quickly, and they are a main source for our foxes, all right? So if you're thinking about a fox, a larger creature takes more energy to sustain its life. It's only getting 100 calories of that original 10,000 calories there for our producers. And then finally, probably not the best example in the world. Has anyone ever seen an eagle eat a fox? It could happen, but I've yet to see it in my lifetime. But an eagle might try to eat a fox. It's only going to get 10 calories of that original 10,000 calories down in our producers. And we don't want to forget about one of the most important parts, the decomposers. And let me break it down for you. Our decomposers, they are those fungi, bacteria. They break down the dead leafy plant material. There is sump pump number 3, and we are looking at barbecue for you, Steve Flocker. You can't beat smoked meats. Back to our part. Our decomposers, they break down that dead plant tissue, and they are essential for recycling those nutrients back into the soil, which if we really want to get technical, our soil is very important for those producers as well. So the decomposers, they can break down dead animal carcasses, they can break down waste. We as humans, we've learned to our city dump where we drop all our tree trimmings and our leaves. They break down over time. We recycle those materials and hopefully turn them back into soil that is very nutritious. And I know what you're thinking, Mr. Haden. This is just one example of a food chain. And you're right. We have aquatic food chains. We have food chains that are more in mountainous regions. But all that energy has to flow from somewhere. And the main sources are the sun that creates that energy, and then it moves up from there, okay? And then some of you might be confused, or not confused, but you might have heard of what's called a food web. A food web is going to have a bunch of arrows that points to different organisms, and it points to what those animals can eat. If I'm an animal and I have a wide variety of animals that I can eat, that helps me not become extinct. It gives me lots of choices. And one other thing to mention with our food chain too is a food chain, when populations go up and down, they naturally fix themselves. So a good example, if I have some disease that's moving through the rabbit population, the number of rabbits go down. From there, the grass or the producers, it grows plentiful because it's not getting eaten as frequently. By having more food to eat, it helps the rabbits come back. Also, when we think about the rabbit population decreasing, the fox that prey on the rabbits, they are going to decrease in number. And then so our nature is a very beautiful system. Maybe there's our sump pump number 4. We're talking about Buchanan County Health Center. Literally do not go there unless you are very ill. So back to our example with the food chain there. Some of the food chains or ecosystems that we're seeing, like in Venice, Italy, where they have all the canals and the river flow, or I should say the ocean water, we're seeing species of fish and animals that have not been present there due to all the human activity. So if you want to see maybe one good thing to come out of the coronavirus is just our scientific data about how these populations, how they come back so quickly given the short amount of time. And speaking about animal populations, I brought these animals in today. They are stuffed animals of my children. They do have a problem with stuffed animals. They have too many of them. But we have a lemur. We have our koala. I believe this is a puffin and a kangaroo. Later on, when my ratings really drop, I will bring my daughter Kennedy on. She is in love with marsupials. So she can say the word marsupials, but just drop the M. She has a very unique way of saying it. But you might think, Mr. Haden, I haven't seen any marsupials in Iowa. Well, the joke's on you, because a possum is a marsupial, okay? And then when we think about back to our food web that I was talking about earlier, the more things that you can eat, the less likely you are to die from starvation as an animal, okay? Some of our sponsors that we did not get to that I do want to make sure we get to today, McDonald's. We literally are on carry out until the governor says we can't be anymore. And thank you today for listening on episode number 4. I realize that this was more of an environmental science related lesson, but this does deal directly with agriculture, even for our domesticated animals that we have to feed on a daily basis. So I appreciate you for watching. There's our sump pump number 5. We'll go one last to round her out. We got Spawn and Rose Lumber. Build something if you're bored. So from there, I will see you tomorrow, episode 5. We're going to be making it through our first full week of Mr. Haden's Ag Lesson. I'm signing off. Good night.